whilst I see it more as they're just tools that can be used as any tools. We have PCs and we have mobile phones and we have search engines, and artificial intelligence, from my perspective, is more a tool that can help humans in dealing with this complex world that we're in. But it's fascinating to see how there's sometimes, it's like you have to be on one side or the other, and I think very much that they can coexist.
That's super super accurate in my opinion too. I mean, the whole aspect of the metaphor used as a tool, I think, is key here because too many times, and at least of what I've witnessed in my career, has been these new capabilities, new technologies, new platforms, the dot-com era, and then before that, the computer era, and so far. I'm going
Yeah,
to date
yeah,
myself here, but when
yeah,
these things come out, it's an either or, and that's how it's usually portrayed in society as an either or without looking at what about the blended environment, how does this get assimilated and create a environment and an outcome that's beneficial working
yeah,
together rather than having it as an either or situation.
yeah,
So, I think that's sort of like the challenges we have today, especially in competitive intelligence, because, that's an environment that has been around again for many, many years, but, we have always having new technologies and processes and methods and procedures and so forth that can help us augment the capabilities here. And I use the word augment here because that's tied into the augmented intelligence sort of platform that we want to talk about as well.
yeah, yeah. No, so I think that's sort of, and then the key is who makes the final decisions in the end? Is it sort of the machine or humans? And I think, and we'll come back to that, but I think that depends on the type of decisions very much. And I think it's more a question for us to learn how to use these tools to help us in our daily lives.
So I think this is a good transition point to the next slide because we start talking about different challenges and the behaviors around activities and how they play out to different perspectives in the intelligence chain. So
Yeah.
this chart here, do you want to talk a little bit about this? This is something that we've talked about quite a bit in the past.
Yeah, sure. I think this is, I think, a survey that we did, a web survey that we did at a SCIP conference a couple of years back. But I think it's still very accurate in describing sort of where machines are best suited and where humans are best suited. This graph is divided into the 6 steps of the competitive intelligence cycle. So you collect, process, search, analyze, collaborate, and deliver. And we asked all the participants, there was about 50 people that were in this session, which of these steps do you think machines are best at doing and which do you think humans are best at doing? And the further to the left you go there means that machines are best, and the further to the right, humans are best. And as you can quite clearly see, the first 3 steps there, collect, process, search, and find, are more to the left. So machines are better suited for that, whilst the 3 last steps here, analyze, collaborate, deliver, are more to the right. And I think maybe the exact location of the dots may differ a little bit, but I think the overall message or conclusion for this is remains even today.
So I think what you're trying to say, Jesper, is the fact that the webinar is over. We've come to the conclusion, and we can fix everyone's problems. Just take a look at this map, and you'll know where to go, right? If only it
Exactly.
was that easy, right? If only it was that easy. No, I'm sure. As this chart is excellent because I think it gives you that snapshot of data, right? Now, but over time, these bars and these levers are going to vary. They're going to move left and right depending over time on how AI becomes more and more sophisticated and humans become better and maybe filling a different niche that's not necessarily reflected in this chart, as well as you do double clicks within each of these because each of these has dozens of subtopics and sub processes associated with each of these 6 topics here, right? So as you do the
Yeah.
double clicks, you can really get involved in terms of, well, what really does the AI tool sets that are in place today, how can they manage that? And then what other ones aren't? So within some of these things that might be heavily human based, there could be some machine activity or AI activity that helps in that way and vice versa. So I think,
Yeah.
this at a very generalized sense is helpful. But of course, over time is really the challenge here because
Yeah.
if we really look at things, and I think I'm probably going into the next slide here, but if we really look at things, which you can go next slide, please, Holly. If you look at things around the future state, around scenario planning, and around this thing that we call augmented intelligence. I mean, this is something I think that's it's a derivation in a maturity learning aspect around human and AI intelligence that I think is supplementing our either or perspective and kind of having a blended environment. Jesper, you want to talk a little bit about this before I interject my usual 2 cents, as I say?
Yeah, no, I think we're in agreement here. This is not sort of an either or thing. It's using it in the best. You're using it's a tool that can help you, especially in the early phases of the CI process, to define sort of who, what, when, and where, and then once you get that help from the tool, humans can focus on sort of the more analytical parts and why, and putting information into context in a better way, and make it actionable, and then take the final decisions. So I think that's how we define augmented intelligence. It's not sort of either or. It's we're actually helping analysts to take better decisions.
Absolutely. And I think what's talking about the timeline of maturity along this augmented intelligence pathway, you really start to think about as the AI becomes more and more lifelike and self-aware, if I can use that term, which I know is a lot of controversy in that space. It's supposedly on paper can have the ability to encroach upon some of those behaviors that humans were counted on doing, more of the whys and the gut feels and some of that stuff. But that's a slippery slope, in my opinion, because you have to be very careful with bias and with preferential treatments and all these other kinds of things that I think is inherent in the design of the tools themselves. I mean, this is human nature we're talking about. So when you really look at these sort of maturity levels of how AI can grow and possibly take over or encroach upon, human type of decision-making processes, I think we really need to be careful on how that works out and how that behaves, because, in the changing world we have today, there are dozens of parameters associated with human assessment. You can look at culture and region and slangs and biases, and of course hallucinations in the AI space. There's a ton of different areas here that we have to be careful on.
But I don't think we need to be too worried about that.
Yeah.
About AI, no, but about AI taking decisions. It's not, because I think AI is taking decisions for us all the time already today. It's just that we aren't so aware of it. But I think it's the type of decisions. AI is taking decisions about simple things.
Yeah.
Do this or do that, where it's very easy to take the best decision. It's the more complex decisions, I think that we still can't entrust AI. But sometimes I feel that, yeah, sure, AI might make mistakes once in a while, but I think probably less mistakes than a human, because humans also make a lot of mistakes.
Absolutely.
And even if AI makes a mistake, you can usually kind of track down why it made a mistake, and then correct it so that it doesn't happen again. I'm not sure you can say the same for humans, because humans tend to make the same mistakes over and over again. But AI will actually learn and improve.
And yeah, it's an algorithm, right? And it's based upon how you tweak it. And unfortunately, humans don't have that sort of same switch that we can do. Human nature.
No, and it's the consistency. It will always,
Yeah.
I mean, based on what's happened in the past, it will always take the same logical decision. Then if it's right or wrong in that specific scenario is a different question. But yeah, for some purposes, just leave all the decisions to AI.
So I think this is a good segue into the next slide as well, Holly, please, such that we can then look at not only about what works and what doesn't work, but more of the specifics around the maturities and areas that are strengths and weaknesses. And I think here, this is a simplistic perspective that that we're showing here. Jesper, why don't you have a say on here in terms of what this
Yeah,
looks
no,
like
this is a
representing?
bit simplistic, but just to illustrate kind of the previous points as well, that humans are best at some things and machines at some. But if you combine the two, humans plus machines, then hopefully you should get the best outcome. And by sort of augmenting a human decision making with the machine, and that's kind of the basis behind this.
Yep. So some of the things, again, from I think it's important. This slide is a representation of making the implicit explicit, and I think it's important to make this sort of very obvious, hopefully, representation here because it is really the best of both worlds. It's I always call it the sum of the parts is greater than the individual parts themselves,
Yeah.
and you're going to get more value out of the combined environment. So then, of course, there's 100 different double clicks in that augmented intelligence space in terms of what does that really look like. I mean, we could talk about it strategically, but there's a pragmatic approach about how do we implement, how do we really look at what an augmented intelligence model consists of. And that's where I
Yeah.
think we get into some of the nitty gritty around details around specifics be related to the human behavior and the machine behavior and so forth. But I
Yeah.
think this is an important slide to show.
And again, it's not like a zero sum game where you have to have either or, but it's more like 1 + 1 is more than 2. It
Yeah,
becomes sort of three. I think
yeah,
that's so see AI as your friend, but and not a threat, but use it
absolutely.
in the right way.
As long as it's used in the right way, you're absolutely right. So this is a slide that we start getting at some of the those nitty gritties here, the little bit more details around uh, some of the parameters, pros and cons of different areas. And I'm not going to go through these specifically. This is more for a generalization for the audience. But what I really want to talk about here is that any system by itself is going to be limitations. There's going to be risk areas. There's going to be areas of contention, especially when we look at the forward-looking aspects. Now, traditionally, Justin, you and I have talked about it in many skips and as well as individual conversations we've had about, AI and the maturity of AI today, and in the general sense, has really been good around using existing data and arriving at, either segmentation, maybe addressing sort of market trends or stressing sort of Paretoing of the predictive element. Not let me back up, not
Yeah.
the predictive element, but more around how behavior has happened in the past. I think where some of the challenges are, at least in the competitive intelligence space, is really about the future aspects. And that's something that AI is trying to get a foothold in the sense of having the confidence of CEOs around the world and those that I've spoken to have really looked at AI as that building block, but not entirely confident I'm betting the farm on the direction that AI is saying. There needs to be other
Mhm.
signals in there that relate to that it can either confirm or possibly not confirm the direction that AI might be showing. That's where the human intelligence aspects come
Mhm.
into play. When we talk about generalized, the activities happening within the region or cultural aspects or, things that are geopolitical sense that aren't taking consideration in the AI modeling. I mean, this is why this is a constantly moving kind of a varying sort of environment that we have to make sure there's a lot of dials here we can turn to be able to understand the relationships, but it's not just clearly black and white. AI is only going to be used this for this and human for this. There's that blending element we need to talk about.
Yeah. No, and I completely agree. I mean, we all know that AI reacts and is based on things that have happened in the past, and it sort of predicts based on what we've done in the past. But if something new comes out, or if there's a surprise event or something that has never happened before, that's when AI has difficulties handling that and coming up with good recommendations. So there's still a limiting factor there. And also to your point, depending on how AI has been built and on which model, there may be things like cultural factors that are different in different countries. That something that has come out of North America may not work in Africa or in Asia because there are other circumstances there that have to be taken into consideration.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up about
So it's
uh, sorry to interject, but I'm glad you brought up about the other country implications because these yellow dots behind me, I wanted an opportunity to talk about these yellow dots. And these are, SCIP intelligence centers of excellence that we have around the world to help us understand the regional issues that can apply to your AI and human or augmented intelligence modeling. So this is something that I think is incredibly useful, and we need to make sure we build up a momentum around this sort of blended environment so that we get the best of all worlds. The cool thing about this is that those organizations, I mean, we have all these yellow dots behind me, all these intelligence centers of excellence. Many are much more mature in their intelligence thinking than others. What this model helps us do is to bring those less mature regional environments up to speed very quickly without having to go through the long trial and error period that normally exists with developing intelligence communities. And the cool thing is that there's an opportunity to leverage, an opportunity to use modeling like this with the right tools. And that's where your expertise, Jesper, is all about because you represent an organization that's developed the tool sets around putting these things together, which is, in my opinion, an absolutely critical element of any sort of successful hybrid augmented intelligence model.
No, thanks for that. But I also think that I'm just thinking loud here. Even if you have a great tool and it gives you good information, sometimes, how should I put it? Sometimes AI models or computer systems can be very cold and very direct. This is the response. This is how it is. This is the facts. But I think where humans need to come in as well is maybe also to put this kind of ethical perspective on the AI generated data as well. Because there might, or privacy concerns or things like that have to be also taken into consideration. That I think AI alone is not yet, at least, powerful enough to be able to evaluate and do on its own. Is this right or wrong to do this? And ethical questions that you also have to consider.
And those ethical questions are different across the globe. Even in the legal sense, in the ethical sense, in the moral sense, because different countries have different cultural implications and so forth. Which leads me to go ahead, finish your point, please.
No, so exactly, it's to my point as well. So the machine might give you an answer, this is X, Y, Z, but the implication of that can be very different depending on the organization or the country that you're in.
So this conversation leads to something I feel is extremely important. And it gets some traction in the AI conversations, but certainly, in my opinion, not enough. And that's around bias. Because regardless of how agnostic you try to make your modeling, there's always a bias that's implied. And then there's literally dozens, if not hundreds, of different types of biases out there. And that's something that's really going to be concerning because the bias toward a favorable algorithm outcome in one place of the world could be not favorable for another. So now you have geographic biases. And with that sort of behavior, you really have to have a understanding and a complexity because now the world is very small. Big data, IoT has shown the world is very small, right? So when you have these global conversations around augmented intelligence and behaviors and so forth, you have conflicting biases. And how does augmented intelligence applications really address that? And these are, additional challenges. I mean, these are, again, that's another 5 more webinars we can put on the docket, right, Holly, to talk about that. But you get where I'm going with this, right, Jesper?
Yeah, no, and it is an important question to keep in mind as well. Even though AI produces the same response, it can be interpreted different depending on where you are.
So, this is a good conversation around this sort of thing because there's many different things here that Of course, there's a lot of benefit that can come out of it, but there's a lot of challenges. And then, of course, there's some, not so great benefits that can come out of this if it's wrongly used or if it's used in
Yeah,
a nefarious behavior, which is a whole nother conversation we can have.
yeah,
Maybe this is a good time for us to transition to the next slide. Holly, please. So let's talk a little bit about this collaborative future. This is really talking about how, pretty much summing up what we've been talking about. But one of the
yeah.
things I did want to add in here is around the future's perspectives. We touched upon that a little bit in the conversation, but I wanted to stretch that out a little bit, Jesper, if that's okay with you. Really looking at the AI human augmented relationship algorithms in a futures perspective. I mean, I think, as I mentioned before, the predictive element of AI, using AI as a predictive tool, is not universally accepted because of its confidence level isn't high, and that's just, I think, because of maturity and so forth. But what's critical to understand is really that futures, scenario planning, predictive, as well as then the next level being prescriptive. What are the actions we should be taking based upon the predictive algorithms that AI and humans and so forth can supply? There's some
Yeah,
challenges there, right, Jesper?
yeah. No, I agree with that, and this slide is also kind of summarizing what we've said so far. What we often get asked is, okay, fine, we buy this augmented intelligence, AI, and machine, but how will that affect competitive intelligence? How will it affect people working with CI? And I think we've made it quite clear that AI will basically replace the jobs of in the earlier part of the CI cycle. So, collecting and categorizing and summarizing and writing newsletters and all that. And that in itself, I think, will have a huge impact on competitive intelligence professionals because, frankly, a lot of people used to be working with that part. A lot of CI analysts have that as their job, and I think there will be definitely less need for those kind of jobs. So what's left for competitive intelligence is then the analysis and the interpretation, the higher level tasks. And for that, I think you have to be much more skilled and have much more experience to be able to, provide this advice to decision makers. So I think there will be a big shift in competitive intelligence because of AI.
Well,
In the kind of tasks that people do. Yeah.
I totally agree, and I think that goes along with all new technologies that come into existence. There's always an up leveling of
Yeah.
human skill sets to
Yeah.
accommodate the baseline automation that occurs with that whatever industry you're in. It's always a similar
Yeah.
sort of
And that's
behavior.
going to be worrying for some people
It is, of
whose
course.
jobs might be, automated away and replaced.
But it's also, I look at it as an opportunity for others to really look at it
Exactly.
as a means to up level their skill sets, right? I mean, that's what when the
Exactly.
horse and buggy went away, all the horse and buggy manufacturers had to figure out what to do now that the automobile industry came into play. And I mean, that's a rudimentary,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
example, but you get where I'm going.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think my only not say concern, but I think if because you have to have this skill and you have to have this experience to be able to do the analysis and come up with recommendations and advice for C-level executives and everything. But I think if at least if I were that smart, you wouldn't be sort of satisfied with staying in that position of just giving advice. You'd want to move up and
Yeah.
actually become the person who makes the decisions, which I think in a sense might be a risk for competitive intelligence. People who are that smart won't stay in
Yeah.
CI. They
Yeah.
will move on.
There's a comfort level in terms of your scoping and
Yeah,
stuff like that. Yeah. And others
yeah,
may
yeah,
be receptive to it, others may not. But you know what? That's again, similar to a lot of other disciplines that occurs. But what I think is
yeah,
important is that this is going to open up, I think, a lot more different scenarios. I mean,
yeah.
in the
Yeah.
traditional old school way of doing CI, it was pretty much a myopic view, and you weren't impacted by
Mm-hmm.
in today's world, the hundreds, if not thousands of variables as part of what I call this perpetual disruptive environment we live in. And I
Yeah,
guess with that sort of a scoping and spectrum of issues, there could be other human intelligence related behaviors that these
Mm,
individuals can then arise to supplement
mm,
the AI content that's been automated.
mm. But then they have to, rise to the challenge,
Yeah,
and
yeah, of course.
it's going to take an effort. You can't keep on doing what you've done, just sending out newsletters about what
Right.
what happened last week.
Without a
Um,
question, the playing field has absolutely changed, as you just
yeah,
indicated. I mean,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I'm a big every solution provider I talk to, every um, executive leadership decision maker I speak with, I am constantly telling them about the fact that tools need to be used to manage today's
Hmm.
data centric environment that we live in, and you have
Hmm.
to have tools that have the ability to not only extract the golden nuggets, as I call it, from that
Hmm.
tidal wave of data, but also to help set a direction, help
Hmm.
you put whether it's a market direction, a technology direction, human behavior direction, and these are all based upon 1,000 variables out there. But that combination
Hmm.
of the heavy lifting that AI can provide and the grounding that human intelligence can provide in this augmented intelligence environment is really what's key, I think, for any
Hmm.
decision making successful strategy out there.
And what I mean, because you obviously in the role you have, you talk to a lot of CI professionals. What would you say that is what's their biggest fear or concern with AI, or what's the biggest benefit they see from AI from what you see, from what you hear?
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen, there's a couple of ways to play this out. The greatest benefit, obviously, is the handling of all this data.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, yeah,
that's a given,
yeah.
right?
That's clear.
Without
Yeah,
AI, forget about
yeah,
it.
yeah,
You're not
yeah,
going to get anything out of it. The biggest
yeah.
scares, or I wouldn't say scares, more like challenges, is really around what can AI do? AI is almost, in some ways, if I may be so negative at a point here, is that it's a solution looking for a problem. And it's like,
Hmm.
okay, I got AI. What am I going to do with it? And I think what a lot of companies are trying to do is to figure out when they apply AI to the data, does it give them the desired result that they're looking for?
Hmm.
And as a solution provider, you really got to think about, is this desired result what my clients are going to want to see?
Hmm.
And the direction that they want to take action on. And then, furthermore, how can AI help them with what actions they should be taking if there's a significant confidence level around what AI is telling them where to go? So that challenging environment there is really, I think, the biggest thing that I've seen and I've noticed. And
Hmm.
it's a outcome of the maturity of the AI modeling and the confidence level. I think that goes along with that maturity aspect. And
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
have organizations that have a long um, longevity in the tool development and in their maturity of the tool development and have been around for a long time, so they understand the business. I mean, those people I've seen as taking a more proactive approach in developing that predictive element that AI can bring. Others that are a
Hmm.
little new to the game are still trying to understand, I think, what that might mean. But by no means is that, I mean, I'm not saying to exclude them. I'm not showing favoritism here. I'm just saying that maturity and the knowledge of how the tool sets and the tool development can play a part in the AI generation and where to get the greatest benefit out of the AI generation can be seen from the maturity of the solution provider.
Hmm.
So that's a long answer to your short question, but hopefully you got
Yeah, no,
you
but
got the
it's
gist.
it's thanks. It's interesting to hear sort of other perspectives. I mean, we obviously as a tool provider, we get a lot of good feedback from AI managing the data and helping them categorize and see trends and patterns and all that. But at the same time, we also see that the quality of the data input is becoming much more important.
Yeah, yeah,
AI is great at handling and managing everything and large amounts of data. But if the data that goes in is bad or wrong, then the output that comes out will also be bad or wrong.
yeah, yeah.
So I think that is something from our perspective that has become much more important, to verify and clean and ensure that your sources are relevant and factual and all that. Because otherwise, AI can do a great job, but what comes out is still garbage.
You bring up a very good point. I talk about this point a lot in some other forums that I've been involved in, but it's really around the accuracy or the veracity of the data. Because in
Yeah.
today's world with deep fakes and fake news and everything else you want to call it,
exactly.
the ability or false flags even when companies
Yeah,
have done this historically to provide release information that can lead a competitor astray.
yeah,
And when you take AI gathering this information, it's going to be hard to determine what is real and what's not because it's looking at it all with this through the same lens.
yeah,
And that whole aspect around, how do competitive intelligence professionals today really behave and react to the plethora of information out there, and how to differentiate between what is factual and what's not. And
yeah,
then
yeah.
moreover, it's really, even if though it may be factual, it's not necessarily what society adopts. And
Yeah, and
that's a
even if
whole
it's a
nother
fact,
conversation.
I think that also it also depends on which expert you trust the most.
Yes,
Which
yes.
expert is usually right, or which
Sourcing.
expert, the sourcing is even though it's right, it might not be fake, but some data is better than other data.
Yeah.
Simply, yeah,
But I think what we just did is a 360 back to the importance of augmented, right? We use the AI generated stuff and we apply the human element on it so we can tell, hey, you know what? This doesn't pass the gut test. This
yeah,
seems a
yeah,
little shaky. We have one data point on here that's saying one thing, but it's not backed up by the other data points. We can make
yeah,
that
yeah,
sort of determination from the human intelligence um, perspective. So I think,
yeah, yeah.
that's a great way to come back. I don't know if we plan to do it that way, Jesper, in our conversation to have a 360, but it worked out well in our
Of
discussions.
of course we planned it.
So let's go to the next slide, Holly. I think we're coming up to the conclusion here pretty much. Yes, that is the
Yep.
conclusion. So we covered a lot of ground in this, and I'm hoping that the perspective and the objective that we wanted to have in this conversation really was achieved through understanding the complexities, risks, behaviors, and that kind of things, as well as the advantages to an augmented complementary relationship between AI and human intelligence. I'm hoping that's what we achieved in this conversation. Jesper, do you believe that's same thing in my assessment?
Yeah, no, again, it's not a battle between two forces. They should join each other, and we should definitely see AI as a tool, a very powerful tool, but still just a tool that can help us.
So with that, Holly, do you want to peruse the question listing here if we have any that we can sound off on?
Yeah, we don't have any right now. If anybody does have a question, please add it.
I
Now
had
we're
one. I had
good.
one sent to me prior to, just as a FYI, and the question
Okay.
was really around. And we may have touched upon this in the conversation, but I'm going to respect the individual submission here and say it anyhow. Was really around, what are the main takeaways that an individual attending this webinar is really going to be able to walk away with in terms of how do they start looking at the future state of our AI, and how can they start implementing a blended model, AI and human intelligence sort of
Mhm.
modeling. Jess, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, first of all, I think AI as such is such a big topic in itself. There are so many different types of AI. Usually when we talk about AI now, it's generative AI and chatting with your data and asking questions and things like that. But let's not forget that AI can be used, for simple things like categorizing and summarizing and translating, and that's also AI, and that's quite easy to start with. Those models. But I think, using Gemini and ChatGPT will give you a sense of what's possible, and then you have to decide what sources you want to incorporate into your AI usage. I think that would be key to start with.
Totally agree. I mean, that fact of the matter here is that I think the advice we would give is to you got to crawl before you walk, before you run, and you want to take
Yeah,
things at a baby step level, right?
yeah. No, and let AI do all the sort of all the grunt work, so that you can do all the great work. Is what we usually say.
Yep.
So let AI help you, and then focus on the harder things.
Yep. Excellent. Any other questions? I think we have one more in the Q&A box, right, Holly?
Yeah, we have a question here from Douglas. Will a list of participants be made available after the call, and will there be a replay copy of the slides available? So, quick answer that I can give you here. A list of participants may be made to Jesper and Paul. And then a replay of the video will be available to SCIP members on the SCIP website here in a couple days. And a copy of the slides will be made available upon completion of a survey that I'll be sending out here shortly.
So the survey is an important point. We want to make sure we get everybody's opinion back on the value, the structure, the format, so forth and so on. So I highly encourage everyone to take part of the survey. And of course, I'm sure that everyone here could take advantage of the fact that Jesper and I are always available for questions or content. If you haven't linked in with us, by all means do so.
Yeah, no, please welcome that. And this is a favorite topic of mine. So happy to discuss and connect on LinkedIn as well. Yeah,
absolutely. Any other final questions here?
Yes, sir. I have a question.
Yes.
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me to these special events. I want to know about the future. You were talking about different future scenario planning, etc. I would like to know how the competitive intelligence guide us or towards the future. I don't know if you can tell me about it. Some machines, on how the intelligence can, how the artificial intelligence can help us in order to make different scenarios.
So I'll take a quick first pass, if you don't mind, Jesper, on that. So from what I've seen and talked to and research, AI is a great tool, as we've just been talking about, taking existing data, but the ability, as the algorithms become more and more complex, the ability to really look at where trends are going. So you really have to look at market trends, technology trends, social economic trends, organizational behavior trends. These sorts of trends help dictate where organizations and business and industry and society is going. And that's the first step in understanding how you can use these tools to help look at future states. So with that sort of future state, spectrum that you've painted, then AI, in my opinion, is getting better and better at doing a lot of different scenario plannings, right? A lot of different futures perspectives where they can do simulations on future states on things. And then from those simulations, this happens a lot in not only in industry, but in the military context and so forth, anticipating what is going to happen in industry and in society and business, as well as anticipating what your competitors might be doing in those spaces. And through the use of AI, as AI becomes more and more mature in its capabilities, that's where I think the AI development is really going to be taking us. And as intelligence professionals, we need to be able to understand that and extract that content from the outcomes of those scenarios, of those algorithms, into our human intelligence behaviors. Jesper, do you want to build on that at all, please?
Yeah, I think that AI can help predict the future trends, but it will always be based on past events, and it can sort of predict if this trend will continue or not. If there is a big disruption in technology or anything else like that, it's going to have a tougher time to do that. But I think AI we've seen some cases where in competitive intelligence, for example, we have some customers who use tools to track leading indicators, which can be, I don't know, population growth in a certain region or buildup of certain supplies and things like that, that are indicators that we are following a certain trend into the future. And that can be helpful to see sort of which scenario is unfolding. So AI is great for following trends and patterns and predicting based on that. But I think you always have to have some sort of state of alert in case something out of the ordinary happens, which seems to occur more and more often today. It's like there's always something disrupting.
The exceptions become the norm, right, Jesper?
Exactly, almost. Yeah, that's the world we live in today.
Does that help?
So it's hard. I mean, predicting the future is extremely difficult nowadays.
If we had the ability to do that, we'd all be lottery winners, right?
But we can prepare. We can prepare for different outcomes.
Any other questions or comments?
I don't think we have any more.
Okay, so let's wrap this up then. Thank you so much, folks, for attending. Again, reach out to ourselves here if you have any questions or content or questions or comments that you'd like to make? And Holly, thank you so much for moderating this.
Yeah, thank you both to Paul and Jesper. I think this is a really great conversation to have today. Again, I will be sending out a survey link. I ask that everybody who attended, please fill that out. That helps us improve our webinars going forward and all of our educational content. And you can give us, ideas if you have something specific you're looking for. Thank you again, Jesper. Paul, any last words?
Thank you so much for having me. Enjoyed it very much.
Thank you again from my side, and thank you, Jesper. Take care, folks.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate you joining. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.